Writer Radio is a BKR Media production.
All right.
Hey, what's up? It is the Writer Radio podcast, which has not been very active the last couple of weeks. I apologize for that, but I do have an explanation and good news to go with it. If you are a fan of the podcast, it will continue, and it's going to be more frequent. The reason for the pause is that I got a new job. I am back working in radio on a full-time basis. It is a new show on WLVL. It comes out of Lockport, New York, which is it's a city on its own, but it's kind of a northern suburb of Buffalo, kind of between Buffalo, Niagara Falls, Lockport, all in the same general area. Those of us from Buffalo say we're from Buffalo when we're not necessarily. You live in the suburbs, you say you're from Buffalo. So if you're from Lockport, you might tell. If you're from Lockport and you're out of town, you're in an airport, somebody says, where are you from? You say, I'm from Buffalo. Then eventually, if you find out they're from Western New York, you hammer down, and it's not exactly Buffalo. It's a little north of Buffalo, but it's the same general crowd. So Western New York is the origin of the podcast and also the origin of the radio show. Here's the plan for the future. I want both to be the same thing. Not exactly the same thing, but I want Writer Radio, the podcast, to feed Writer Radio, the radio show. And then the radio show feeds the podcast. So sometimes there'll be something really good that happens live on the radio, and we record it, and then I'll be able to put that into the podcast. And sometimes we do something on the podcast, let's say because somebody can have a conversation with me at 10 o'clock at night. Well, that's not the same as live at 10 a.m. So maybe we record it for the podcast, but it's good enough that in some form it fits on the radio show. So if you like Writer Radio, you'll like the radio part of it. I'm not changing the name of the podcast. I'm calling everything Writer Radio because I have too much crap in my brain. I don't need more names. I'm Brad, writer, and it's Writer Radio, regardless of if it's recorded and coming to you, streaming on your phone, or if it's live at WLVL or WLVL.com, and coming at you, well, possibly streaming there too. But either way, it's still me. I'm still going to speak with the same people about the same general things, but some things will fit better on the radio, some will fit better on the pod, some will fit on both, and I'll make those determinations as we go. So that's kind of the plan moving forward. There's going to be a website very soon that is in the works that will house all of this stuff and help you keep track of what's going on and help you interact and know where to find me and the clips from the show and the videos we've been putting out. Not live videos, but like animated AI videos of clips of the show that I think have been fun. Probably continue to do those as well. But there's a lot going on. And in the time since I have last recorded a podcast, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 2-hour radio shows. So you missed 14 hours of me blabbing, and that's why I wasn't at home blabbing into a microphone. But now I've got a studio where we can record with multiple people. We can bring bands in. We can do game shows. I've got access to all this equipment that can help the podcast get better. And then I've got the podcast equipment that helps the radio show get better, because really 10 to 12 is a very limited window when it comes to booking guests, speaking with the people I want to speak with. So I'm very excited that this is moving in this direction. The podcast will continue, but will also contain parts of the radio show. It's all going to be one thing. You can still find me in the same places, but now you can find me in more places. I recommend downloading the WLVL app. It's very simple. It's a small, really quick download, and then right on there you can listen live. And please tune in on or in the morning, 10 a.m. to noon, every Monday through Friday. I'll be there live. Podcast will continue. That's what's up. All right, 2 parts to today's podcast. One, with the NFL Honors Awards. Is that redundant? With the NFL Honors ceremony, program, festivities taking place on Thursday, our good friend Nate, who I'm now going to refer to as our junior football correspondent. Everybody on the radio show is a senior blank correspondent. Nate's 10 years old, so he's the junior football correspondent. He's got his thoughts on the awards, who will win, who should win. He's also got thoughts on the Super Bowl and possibly still on the AFC and NFC championship games. We'll see if we can get that in as we talk to my 10-year-old son, Nate, who is now Nate Ryder, junior football correspondent.
Hold up.
All right, first up, assistant coach. The nominees are Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator from the Lions. Joe Brady, offensive coordinator from the Bills. Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator from the Lions. Brian Flores, defensive coordinator, Vikings. Vic Fangio, defensive coordinator, Eagles. Correct?
Yep.
All right, what do you got, Nate?
Okay. I think I want and think Joe Brady is going to win.
Okay.
Probably just because I like the Bills.
Yeah, all right. A little biased. A little hometown edge going on right now. The first award.
Yeah.
You're going Joe Brady. This segment is not about the assistant coach of the year. So let's move on to the offensive rookie of the year. We've got wide receiver Malik Neighbors of the Giants. We've got Bo Nix, the Denver quarterback. Brock Bowers, Raiders tight end. Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver from Jacksonville. And Jaden Daniels, the quarterback from the Washington Commanders.
I want and think Daniels should win.
I don't think that's going to be a tough one. I think that's probably a landslide.
Yep.
Although Bowers had a record-breaking season, Bo Nix can't possibly win because Daniels was better. Neighbors was good when healthy. Thomas was very good over the course of the year. But Daniels, I know it's just a regular season award, but is the guy who was capable of leading his team to the NFC Championship game and did so. I think he wins that one as well.
Yep.
I didn't give an opinion on assistant because I don't know. Offensive player of the year, Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Derrick Henry, Jamar Chase, Lamar Jackson. You throwing anybody out of it right off the bat?
Probably Lamar.
I'm throwing out Lamar as well. And I'm throwing out Derrick Henry because he's not going to beat Saquon.
Right.
So we've got two running backs there. We've got two quarterbacks there. This takes it down to Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow had a lot of kind of MVP momentum in the chatter leading toward the end of the season. I thought he had no chance of winning it. And he's not going to win it. But maybe this is where he gets thrown a bone. There's a possibility of that. What do you think?
I think Saquon Barkley is going to win it, and I want him to win it. He deserves to win it. He was playing with the Giants, which didn't have good O-line to help block for him. And then the first year he gets better O-line and better blocking, he turns it into 2,000 yards. Chase, I feel like he's had Burrow since LSU, and now they're back together in Cincinnati. He's had a good quarterback to rely on to throw a good pass to him. Barkley has not had good blockers. Now he does, and then he turned it into 2,000 yards.
Yeah, he's been one of the better players in the NFL since he got here, but he's been hurt a lot, and he also was playing for not much of a team. Gets a chance with the Eagles and shines. I think you're probably right that he'll be the offensive player of the year. Up next, we've got the comeback player of the year, Christian Gonzalez, the corner from New England. J.K. Dobbins, who, hey, he could win it again next year because he got hurt at the end of this season, too. Running back Los Angeles Chargers. Sorry, I do that all the time. Joe Burrow as comeback player of the year. I'm not positive what he came back from.
He had an injury last year.
At the end.
I thought it was like mid-season.
Was it? Oh, that's right, because at the beginning of the year, in the preseason, they were talking about Burrow not being right.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started, 1-4, and then he ramped it up and was excellent by the end of the year. Okay, that one makes sense. Damar Hamlin, who was snubbed last year in favor of Joe Flacco, gets it. And I get why. He barely played last year. He was back in the league. He was on the roster. He didn't do anything. This year he was a real player, and he's back to being just a real part of the NFL, so I get why that might work. And I wouldn't be shocked, although the Vegas odds don't point in his direction, I wouldn't be shocked if Hamlin came out on top there. And then Sam Darnold is the final candidate. What do you got, Nate?
I think Damar Hamlin should win it because, like you just said, this is his first year, actually back. But I kind of feel like Sam Darnold is going to win it because it's, another one of those things where he's been with bad teams and he's been bad. Now he has Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson to throw to.
All the sons.
Yep.
Jefferson,
Addison.
Hawkinson. Yeah.
Yeah. 14-3. 5th in the league in touchdowns and yards.
Well, he looked like a guy worthy of a number 2 overall pick for the first time in his career.
Right.
It's not necessarily even coming back from last year. It's coming back from being the number 2 overall pick. And, hey, look who's back. Look who's a star in the NFL. Not a bad choice. All right, next. Defensive Rookie of the Year. Braden Fisk. I don't even know who that is. Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback.
Eagles.
Jared Verse from the Rams. Cooper DeJean and Chop Robinson. What are we doing here?
Jared Verse for both.
Do you believe it will be Jared Verse? And you believe it should be Jared Verse?
Yeah.
All right. Any explanation there? You can say no if you want. You want to say no?
Yeah.
You're like, I don't want to talk about this one. Move on. I got more to talk about.
Yeah, I've just seen him play the most probably out of all of them. So I feel like I have to say it.
All right. Fair enough. Coach of the Year. Sean McDermott not on the list. Kevin O'Connell of the Vikings. Dan Campbell of the Lions. Dan Quinn of the Commanders. Andy Reid of the Chiefs. Sean Payton of the Denver Broncos. A lot of times this award goes to the team that most exceeded expectations. So is that what you went with your choice? Or yes, you're nodding.
For one of them.
All right. What do you got?
I think that Dan Quinn should win it. I think Dan Campbell will win it.
Okay. Why do you believe that?
Because Dan Quinn...
I'm sorry. Why do you believe it's two different? Because I'm with you that I think Quinn should win it. Mm-hmm. Why is it that you think that Campbell will?
Because the Lions, they've never been really great until this year.
Yeah.
They went 15-2. They might have had 2 or 3 50-point games, averaging 32 points. First in the league, averaging points. Number 1 seed in the league. A lot of people were talking about how they were the best team in the league.
Sure.
Throughout the regular season, got the first round bye.
Yeah, the only thing that makes me say he doesn't win is the first part, which the first thing I said, which is this is very often an award based on performance versus expectation, and the Lions are a lot of people's pick to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl and ended up in the 1 seed like they were, not they were supposed to, but like people expected them to. And the same people that make those predictions are the ones who do the voting. So, that could work against him there. All right. Defensive Player of the Year, your choices are TJ Watt, Zach Bond, who I just learned about yesterday from our good friend John Fuller, the Eagles fan, our senior Philly correspondent on Writer Radio, Patrick Surtain, Trey Hendrickson, and future Buffalo Bill Myles Garrett. I added that part. Mm-hmm. You're looking at me like, oh, really? Is he coming here? Your friends are telling you he's coming here, right?
Yeah.
You came home from school today telling me that your friends told you Myles Garrett wants to be a Bill, but none of them know Myles Garrett at all, right? Okay. All right. What are we doing with this award, Nate?
I think Trey Hendrickson is going to win both.
You've got him for both answers.
Yeah, got him for both answers. Led the league in sacks, and the rest of the defense, and they did end up finishing 8-9 or maybe 9-8, one of those.
Getting close to a playoff spot.
Yeah. About an even record, and the rest of the Bengals defense wasn't really good, and you need a good defense, so could be just led by Trey Hendrickson, and he not need to do all the work. He need to do most of the work to keep them as a possible playoff team.
All right, good enough. We go to, this is a big one, MVP.
MVP.
Your choices are Saquon Barkley, already mentioned. Jared Goff, quarterback of the Lions. Joe Burrow from the Bengals. Lamar Jackson from the Ravens. And Josh Allen, your quarterback from the Buffalo Bills. I have a feeling where this is going to go. And I do want to say, looking at the odds as recently as yesterday, Josh Allen is once again a heavy favorite to take home the MVP. He was for much of the season. Certainly once things started going, like the Chiefs game when he ran in to win it, basically, followed by the Niners game where he's throwing himself touchdown passes. And I don't remember what happened right after that. But it was like a 3-week stretch of all primetime games where he just put on a show and kind of led the pack as far as betting odds went for a while. And then it started to fade, and Lamar Jackson jumped in front for some reason. But as of yesterday, Allen is a heavy favorite. And by yesterday, I mean Tuesday. Nate, which of these is your favorite player? Which of these did you wear a jersey from as recently as yesterday?
Josh Allen.
You like Allen?
Yeah, I think
You're the person in Western New York who likes watching Josh Allen play football?
Yep.
All right.
I think he 100% deserves it way more than Lamar does. Even though the stats don't show it, he was definitely the better player. I feel like most people would say he was the better player.
Who do I trust with the football? Which of them
Josh
do I trust
Allen.
with the football?
Josh Allen.
That's kind of what it comes down to. All right, Nate, you get I got one final question for you before I let you go.
Yep.
Who do you want to win the Super Bowl, and who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Okay.
I thought I was surprising him, and he took his piece of paper and flipped it over. As I said, okay, were you planning on talking about this, Nate?
Yeah, I had a few more things.
All right. Do the Super Bowl thing, and then we'll get to whatever else you have on your paper.
Okay. I want the Eagles to win because I don't know anyone that would want the Chiefs to win a Super Bowl again.
Yeah.
But I think the Eagles are going to win.
Okay.
And I think the final score is going to be 28-27. Eagles win.
1 point game.
1 point game.
All right. Fair enough. All right. So you're picking the Eagles, and you want the Eagles, so that's cool. But you have more you need to talk about?
Yep.
All right. What's up?
So
is this what you were working on when I said it was time to record?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You run the show right now. I'll just chime in when necessary.
Starting with the Super Bowl, some of like the key matchups that there could be: Saquon Barkley versus the Chiefs' entire defense. Really, it's kind of the D-line and the linebackers. If they can stop him before he gets 7 yards or something, if they can like at least slow him down and give time for like the safeties to come in and corners to come in and help bring him down, then they'll be pretty much fine with him, get a few stops at the line. Really just Chiefs defense need to watch out for Saquon Barkley. Second key matchup is going to be A.J. Brown versus Trent McDuffie. Assuming McDuffie will guard A.J. Brown.
I would think that would be likely.
Yep. Take one of the best cornerbacks in the league and put him against one of the best wide receivers in the league in the most important game of the season. There's still obviously Devontae Smith that you can throw to, but A.J. Brown, I think, is the better receiver and going to have the better cornerback covering him.
Makes sense.
Third key matchup is last week when the Bills played against the Chiefs. The tush push didn't work for them that well, and I think the Bills are better than the Eagles are at doing it. Eagles also need to watch out for that. Could be stopped.
And maybe if it gets stopped, say 3 times, don't run it like a 4th and a 5th time.
You could just hand it off to Barkley.
Yeah, you could do some other things. So don't just keep doing the same thing if it's not working.
Right.
They have shown an ability to shut it down when it's the Bills. Not that the Eagles run the exact same play, but the concept is the same, and I'm sure they've got a plan for that one too. So, yeah, heads up. Good point, Nate.
And then last key matchup is Darius Slay, the Eagles' #1 corner, against whoever he'll be guarding for the Chiefs. If he's covering like Hollywood Brown, no one can really cover Hopkins because he's good at jump balls, and Worthy is just is really fast, but I feel like Darius Slay could probably guard him. So basically, Darius Slay, depending on who he's guarding, that could take away offensive threat for the Chiefs.
Your Super Bowl prediction again?
28-27, Eagles win.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
Yep.
All right, there's my man Nate, 10-year-old Nate, junior football correspondent Nate, who is a part of the radio show as well as the podcast, or will be moving forward, especially when it comes to football. He might get a few months off here because the Bills don't play for a while. It's gonna be a long time. I will watch the Chiefs and the Eagles. Anybody saying they're not going to watch the Chiefs and Eagles, I don't believe you. And if you have the power to just ignore the Super Bowl, you're a stronger person than I am. If it was the regular season, I would be looking forward to a game between the Chiefs and the Eagles. Like that was just on the schedule. Oh, the Bills are playing the Dolphins at 1. What's the night game? Chiefs and Eagles. Wow, cool. Can't wait. I would plan around it. Now it's in the Super Bowl, and I'm going to ignore it because I'm mad about a 4th and 1 last week now. No. Get them next year. Still got a good team. Make some good offseason moves. I'm still with you. I still trust you. Josh Allen's got it. And I think he's going to win MVP too, although you just heard that. All right, other part of it, and this is a new thing. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of podcasts have like a whole group of people. It just sounds fun to be around. Like The Ringer, for example. It seems like it would be fun to be there. Just listening to people jumping in on each other's things. There's a fun element to it. And I find that the best entertainment, radio-wise, that I hear, radio podcasts, same thing to me. I want to jump into the conversation. Happens a lot when I'm listening to, like, Jeremy and Joe in the morning or Chopin Bulldog on GR. And especially because they're my friends, I just feel like I want to say something. Like, no, it's my turn to talk. Because it sounds like we're sitting around a bar or a dining room table or whatever it is. And I just want to jump in. And part of the beauty of both radio, talk radio, and now podcasting even more so, is that I think when you take the time to seek out a show and download it, and then you listen to it, and you get really excited, like, oh, there's a new episode of this podcast coming on. Those people kind of become your friends just from listening. And it creates a weird dynamic for talk show hosts, and I'm remembering this now after just a week on the air, like strangers approaching me saying, oh, I heard this, and commenting on something I said Tuesday that I don't remember saying, because they feel like they know me and they feel like they were there with me when we had this conversation. We weren't together. I appreciate it. I love it. But I feel it too. So I'm listening to a podcast today thinking, I wish I was in on this conversation. And it was a Ringer podcast. It was on the 60 Songs That Explain the 90s, the 2000s feed with Rob Harvilla, who's great, and I hope to speak with at some point. I have been in contact with him quite a bit over the last couple of years, and we just have never hooked up for a conversation. Maybe that will happen soon, as he's on a little bit of a hiatus. Maybe I can grab him for 15 minutes or something. But anyway, he hosted it was a live studio audience. It wasn't a studio. I don't know where they were. But 4 people drafting soundtrack albums. It's a music-themed show. I love music conversation, as you probably know from both this podcast and the radio show. It was 4 people drafting. They had to pick 5 albums, one from each of the following categories: 70s, 80s, 90s, 21st century, and concert film. Now, I'm not going to sit here and do a draft, but it did occur to me that I know who my senior music correspondent should be. And it's Josh Gregory. We have recorded multiple podcasts, some for him, some for me. We've done radio shows. I've known Josh for 25 years, and we've been to numerous concerts together. We have a lot in common. We both were college DJs. At the same time, he was in Fredonia, I was in Geneseo. We both have the same sort of musical background, if you will, as far as our listening habits. And, some are different. He was a big punk rock guy. I was a metal guy, early. Then we both, I think, Nirvana hit, and then we all just kind of went in that direction. But, I went to see Tool with Josh within the last couple of years. We've got a lot of things in common, and we also both like to discuss music. So I reached out to Josh. I said, A, will you be my senior music correspondent? He said yes. And I said, B, how about this idea of when I hear a podcast or a radio show or something, and I wish I was in on the conversation, how about we just steal it, credit the podcast or the show that gave us the idea, and then just do our own take on it. So we don't do a draft, but we each make our pick for a top soundtrack album from the 70s, 80s, 90s, current century, 21st century, and then a concert film. So it's not exactly a draft. And also, what's interesting, though, is neither of us picked the same thing for any of them. I feared that we would. We had the same ideas, but we both settled on something different, which is kind of cool. So the idea is to give full credit, and I will. This idea is directly lifted from the Ringer podcast called 60 Songs That Explain the 90s, the 2000s now. And it's an episode called The Soundtrack Draft. I heard it today, which is the day it came out. And then I gave Josh and myself like 20 minutes to figure out our answers. So are they perfect? No. Would we change them with another 15 minutes to think about it? Maybe. Will my answers be different a week from now? Probably. Would my answers be different a year from now? Almost for sure. That's kind of the way it goes. But we're capturing a moment in time. In this moment, Josh and I give our picks from this subject, topic that was 100% lifted from the Ringer podcast I listened to earlier today. Here is Josh Gregory, our senior music correspondent, and me, Brad, on Writer Radio. All right, I guess we'll go in order from oldest to newest and save concert film for last. Josh, 1970s best soundtrack to you today in this moment.
I'm going to go with American Graffiti.
I get that. I
had a second close one.
Yeah, I'm gonna feel free to mention the second close ones too.
Sure. I would go with Saturday Night Fever.
See, that was the first thing that popped into my head. I knew to consider American Graffiti, but I don't know that I've ever watched it. I don't know that I've ever listened to it straight through. I know it's iconic, but Saturday Night Fever is the first thing that came to mind. But then I just started scrolling through movies from the 70s, and I wound up in a different place. 1978's Animal House. It's 1978 masquerading as 1962 at Faber College, and it starts with the Faber College theme. It ends with the Faber College theme. In between, they evoke 1962 perfectly. Louie Louie, Twisting the Night Away, Tossin' and Turnin', Shamalama Ding Dong. You can hear all of them when you think about the movie. Hey Paula, Animal House, the original, the only real dud on the whole thing. Money, That's What I Want, Let's Dance, Dream Girl, What a Wonderful World, and Shout. Pretty good. So there's mine for the 70s. We move to the 1980s. We turn the page. What do you got, Josh?
So, my heart was going with two. One being more of a true soundtrack, not a score, because the band Tangerine Dream did it. So it's not technically a score, but it's a movie called Thief, which if no one's seen it, your listeners here, I highly suggest it. It's one of James Caan's finest movies. And the other one that I was kind of going for was Repo Man, which is just a lights out soundtrack. There's Black Flag, there's Circle Jerks. It's all really a snapshot of the punk scene of LA. Yeah. Perfectly laid out. But what I ended up going with was my no-brainer after I thought about it, and that's the Blues Brothers. The soundtrack for that just makes that movie go. And it's got everybody. Cab Calloway's in it, Aretha Franklin. The entire band is there. Ray Charles, James Brown. Got to be the Blues Brothers.
That's the first thing I thought of with 80s, but I knew I had just picked Animal House, and I couldn't pick Animal House and Blues Brothers together. So I'm glad you did. The other one that I considered, but got rid of because it is so dominated by one track, is Do the Right Thing. It is Fight the Power straight throughout that movie. That's what drives the whole film. And Guy's in there with My Fantasy and some other things mixed in as well that are great. I love it. But when, again, just looking through what movies came out then, I got really caught up on The Lost Boys from 1987. You've got In Excess twice. It's one of my favorite movies. I just showed it to my 10-year-old not long ago, Nate, who people who listen to the radio show and podcast are familiar with, and he loved it too. But In Excess is there twice. There's Lou Gramm. There's a Roger Daltrey song involved. But the ones that really stand out, Echo and the Bunnymen doing People Are Strange, which is a Doors song, which is just, it's perfect. Like the Doors song is perfect, but it needed to be a little bit different. So Echo and the Bunnymen's take on it, while not revolutionary, just fits so well with like the creepy vibe of the movie that also just gives way to being funny. Cry Little Sister is the theme from The Lost Boys by somebody named Gerard McMahon. I don't know of him, but I know that song, and it has stuck with me for coming up on 30 years. Or is that 40? However many years it is. Coming up on 40 years, sure. And then, my God, the sax thing. I still believe the ridiculous shirtless sax player on the beach with the fire. It's awesome. The only beef, really, with the soundtrack is that it's missing Ain't Got No Home by Clarence Henry, which is a song that Sam, a.k.a. Corey Haim, is singing in the bathtub with the shampoo on his head, and then, the dog is that whole thing. I ain't got a man. That thing is not on the soundtrack, which I think stinks. All right, that's the 80s. We move to the 90s. Oh, boy. Knowing that this is sort of our wheelhouse made it very, very difficult. I've got four almosts written down before my actual answer.
Yeah, and I think I've got 6, and this was brutal.
Yeah.
This really, really was brutal because I'll throw in some. You've got a couple of Tarantino flicks. You've got Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction. You've got Swingers, Natural Born Killers, The Crow, Grosse Point Blank. But what I finally settled on was because it really kind of turned a corner for 2 different musical genres. It kind of brought rap and metal together for the first time. And I have to go with Judgment Night. Every single tune on Judgment Night, whether you're into really heavy stuff like Slayer and Ice-T, you've got Helmet and House of Pain, Judgment Night. That has got to be my pick for the 90s, as much as I wanted to go with the other ones.
Yeah, Faith No More with Booyah Tribe. I forgot to write down Swingers, even though it crossed my mind. Everything else I'm about to say, you already said. The ones that I am not going to choose, even though any of them would have been fine selections if this was an actual draft. Singles, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Judgment Night are the 4 that I wrote down. Do you know? And I didn't pick Swingers, so what did I choose, Josh?
Oh, I still have 2 more that I didn't mention.
I chose The Crow. From 1994.
There you go.
The
Perfect.
Cure, Machines of Loving Grace, Stone Temple Pilots, 9 Inch Nails, Rage Against the Machine, Violent Femmes, Rollins Band, Helmet Back in It, Pantera, For Love Not Lisa, which is a cool song called Slip Slide Melting, Thrill Kill Cult, Jesus and Mary Chain, and Medicine. I don't remember Medicine. Jane Seabury or Seabury, however it's pronounced, with I Can't Rain All the Time, which is a big part of the movie. But that all worked for me. Any of those are great. I mean, part of it is our age, and that being, us in our late teens, early 20s. So we're just in love with that, as people tend to be. The other part is that the music industry committed to soundtracks at that point. That was a thing. Oh, yeah. You think about like the Empire Records type of movies that were basically built to put a soundtrack out. It was a soundtrack and then it was a movie, high fidelity type of situation. And there's another one I thought of there too, but that's what people were doing. They were building movies around soundtracks, and I was all for it. All right, that's the 90s. We're into the 21st century. What do you got?
So, this is where we might have an issue because I wasn't sure if High Fidelity was 99 or 2000, and in my brain I said 2000. I could be very, very wrong.
As I just mentioned it, I was thinking, I hope this isn't implying that it's the 90s because I don't even know. It's not on my list. I will give it to you if you'd like, or if you want to give 2 because we were not sure about the year, that's fine. Or I can look it up while you're talking. Go ahead.
So let's go 2 because the other one I think is a little offbeat, and it's for actually one piece of music in the entire movie, and that is Lux Eterna from Requiem for a Dream. So the entire soundtrack is good, and there's some other pieces of music on there, but for that piece of music, and another movie if you've never seen, I can't necessarily recommend it because it'll probably frighten some people. It's one of the most depressing, crazy movies you'll ever see. But, when I was thinking of the 2000s, like, what did I walk away from? When I hear that music, I am immediately taken into that world that movie is about. So that's what I got to go with.
I saw that movie once. It made a huge impression on me, and I have never seen it again. And I think of it a lot. I'm like, do I want to put myself through it again? I think I do, and it's the music and it's the editing. I remember the editing to the music. It was almost like music video style, but sort of almost like there was a click track going to be edited to specifically in the the ritual type of scenes, and that stuck with me. I had one. This is funny. This shows you how much I've been paying attention for the last 25 years. I had a candidate in 2000 that is a very strong candidate. By the way, you were right on High Fidelity being 2000,
okay,
so you're good on that.
Great.
Almost Famous had
yes.
I mean, it's a movie. It's a a love letter to music anyway, and it's right. I don't even have the songs in front of me, but I'm just thinking about, first of all, the Fever Dog and whatever it was that they were performing with the fake band in the movie. Stillwater. I just couldn't think of it. Stillwater was cool and that was fun and that was real. They really did that. But supplementing with your Elton John stuff and your Stevie Wonder stuff. My Cherie Amour is in there, and Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatters is in there. And initially, Stairway to Heaven was supposed to be in there. The big scene where William's playing not William, but the sister is playing a song to explain, this is exactly how I feel. They used a Paul Simon or Simon and Garfunkel song instead, but they intended it to be Stairway to Heaven, which is a little too on the nose. Couldn't get the rights, all that. But that movie was just about music, so it worked well. I, though, am going to jump ahead. I'm jumping ahead 21 years to Licorice Pizza. Licorice Pizza is a phenomenal movie that I've never had a conversation with anyone about. Paul Thomas Anderson made during the pandemic. It came out in 2021, and some of the artists on the soundtrack include Nina Simone, Bing Crosby, the Andrews Sisters, Sonny and Cher, Chuck Berry, The Doors, McCartney and Wings, Clarence Carter, David Bowie, Seals and Crofts, possibly twice. Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead does some stuff on here as well. Gordon Lightfoot, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, James Gang, Taj Mahal. Just a massive soundtrack for a really cool movie that I've never had a conversation with. Have you seen it? I don't know anybody who's seen it.
I have not. I was just going to say you can't have that conversation with me because I've never seen it, but now it'll be on the list.
Yeah, need to do it. Got to do it. All right. Thanks, Josh. Oh, we didn't do the... Nope. Hold on. No thanks, Josh. I'll edit that out. I forgot because I didn't even write this one down because it's just burned in my head. Concert film. So this can be from any era, but a concert film and the soundtrack from that concert film. Josh.
And before we do that, this just dawned on me. How did we both overlook Singles for the 90s?
I had it on my
you had it on your list?
Yeah.
It just dawned on me. I'm like, how did I leave that off?
No,
because
I forgot to write down
back.
Swingers, but I had Singles, Pulp, Reservoir Dogs, Judgment Night, and then I picked The Crow. And you mentioned all of them. I just assumed you mentioned Singles because
perfect.
Why wouldn't you?
So this. So for soundtrack, this was a toss up between two, and I'm going to go with nostalgia because my parents took me to see it. The first one would have been Song Remains the Same with all the stupid, goofy vignettes that they had in it. It was just, it looked like a whole movie. But I've got to go with the Rolling Stones. Let's Spend the Night Together.
Oh, wow.
I remember my parents taking me to see that at the old Como Mall. And that was probably really when I really started to get into the Stones, seeing all that, the giant stage. Let's Spend the Night Together. That's it.
All right. See, to me, it was Last Waltz Forever until I got into Stop Making Sense. Stop Making Sense, Talking Heads. I have seen that far more than any other concert film. I went to see it in the theater with my sons when it came out, on their anniversary tour last year. I have multiple times gone to see Talking Heads tribute bands just because I became obsessed with this band when I finally got around to watching Stop Making Sense, which is directed by Jonathan Demme. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic and perfect. And even if you think, I don't like Talking Heads enough to sit through an entire show, you think, I like 3-4 songs. Try it out for size. Turn it on. It starts with one guy on stage, David Byrne, and then he brings out one more, and they do a song, and then he brings out one more. And the next thing you know, you're like 6 songs in, and there are 12 people on stage with multiple rhythms going on, and backup singers and dancers and chaos, and it's just a beautiful thing to watch the whole thing get built from the start. He just walks out with an acoustic guitar and a boombox, plays a beat, performs Psycho Killer by himself, and then brings in Tina Weymouth for Heaven, which is, and also even if you don't own the studio albums, that's fine. The better version of every one of these songs happens during this performance, which is filmed over 3 nights in Los Angeles back in the early 80s. Well, let's see, 80 must have been 84, because last year was the 30th or 40th anniversary or whatever. I lose 10 years every time I try to talk about something. All right, that'll do it. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
All right, that was fun. Again, the radio show exists now. 10 to noon, WLVL, WLVL.com. If you're in Western New York and you can actually pick it up on the air, it is AM 1340. But for the rest of you, WLVL.com or the app. The app works great. WLVL app exists for both Apple and Android. All right, that'll do it. Thank you to junior football correspondent Nate Dogg and senior music correspondent Josh Gregory for joining me. And thanks to you for listening, downloading, sharing, talking about, telling people about the radio show, telling people about the podcast. All the stuff that you do to spread the word is very, very helpful to me and Nate, and the rest of my family. So please do that, and we will talk to you soon. Talk to you on the radio every day at 10 a.m. at WLVL. You are listening, and you have been listening to Writer Radio.